This is Minecraft's impossible prison, the command block prison. And this is one of the coolest prisons I've ever seen. It's equipped with deadly traps, really interesting puzzles, and much more. Stick around till the end of the video to see if I can escape. Anyways, let's start the video. Right as soon as I spawned in, I was inside of a bedrock box. I started instantly by looking around me. It didn't look like there were any secret passages or secret items, and in front of me there were two double iron doors. Luckily, I don't actually have to do anything except break them. After breaking the iron doors, I walked down the hallway to find a couple of items: a furnace, chest, brewing stand, and a cauldron. I walked over and decided to open up the chest. Inside the chest were random items, but after observing them further, I realized that I might actually have to make a potion. But there was one problem with that. I didn't have any fuel. Now, you're probably wondering to yourself why I would actually need fuel. Well, you see, the sand in my inventory actually looks like it's to make glass bottles. After that, I can use the brewing sand to make awkward potions and then create a potion of slow falling using my phantom membrane that I have. After exploring the other room, I walked into the next room, which was really big. If I fell, then I most likely wouldn't be able to get up. It had a weird bedrock platform and some lava and a very thin pathway of iron bars on the very top. It also appeared to look like there was a zombie, but there was really nothing I could do in that room right now, so I jumped into the next room. After jumping into the next room, I looked around and all I found was this one grass block. I decided to pick it up to see if there was anything under it, but there really wasn't anything down there. So I was thinking to myself, what was I supposed to do in this situation? I mean, I'd explored all three rooms I was able to get to, so what was I supposed to do? But that was when I realized something. You know how I said earlier I couldn't get down? Well, that wasn't actually true. I was starting to form an idea in my head on what I could do. Now, this may seem crazy to some of y'all, but did you know lava can actually negate fall damage? I'm not talking about if you try to MLG with it, but it kind of works the same with water. If I jump into it in the very side of it, it'll actually slow me down, but I have to get out of it before I get burnt alive. So this might be my only option. And just like that, I was successfully able to land in the very bottom part of the lava and avoid taking too much damage. Once I was finally at the bottom, I decided to look around. I then looked to my left and actually saw a sign that said "Place boats here." That was a huge hint. That was implying that I would need a boat. After looking at the sign, I walked to the corner of the room and noticed a zombie that was called Canadian's Friend. I put down one of my sands and got a better look at it, and it actually looked like it was covering something. And after I hit it a few times, it turns out it was actually stepping on top of a pressure plate. I decided to try to kill it because it looked like it was activating something that I would need to deactivate later if I wanted to continue this prison. After I killed the zombie, I decided to pick up the rotten flesh so whatever was being activated would no longer be activated, but that's when I noticed a hole in the wall that had a chest at the very end of it. I decided to open it and I found 7 wind charge inside of it, and that's when I realized that's how I would get back up. If you don't know what the wind charge is, it basically gives you a high boost, and after you jump, it could give you an even higher boost, allowing you to scale a wall of basically any height, so this is how I can get out. I collected all of my blocks and then got near the wall, ready to scale it and land on the bedrock platform using my wind charges. I successfully made it back up, and sure enough, when I walked back into the second room that I had found, there was a sapling sitting right on the ground that it came out of a dispenser in the ceiling above. I then made my way back to the room where the dirt block was and got ready to grow my tree so I could make my boat. I bone mealed the sapling until it grew into a tree, and not only was I able to get some sticks and wood from it, but I was also able to get some saplings in case I needed more wood in the future. I also took the dirt/grass block with me in case I would need to plant a tree later, and had some leftover bone meal in the process. After getting back to the second room, I broke my crafting table and then put my sand in the furnace so I could make a glass bottle in hopes to get a slow falling potion for whatever I would need that for later. Once my glass was ready, I then set down my crafting table and proceeded to craft my glass bottles, and then I went over to the cauldron, filled them up with water, and put them in the brewing stand. Then I took the netherwort that was in the chest originally and started to turn my water bottles into awkward potions. In the meantime, I decided to check out the suspicious looking crafting table that was in the 1x1 hole. I couldn't walk into it, so I had to craft some wooden trapdoors to get inside of it so I could get inside crawl mode. Once my trapdoor was ready, I flipped it and I went into crawl mode and then crawled forward to see what was behind the crafting table. Yeah, so I don't really know what happened to the footage, but it got corrupted or something, but spoiler alert, there was nothing behind the crafting table.
Are you serious?
After my awkward potions finished up brewing, I then put in the phantom membrane and started to make my slow falling potions so I could finally leave this floor. After I got my slow falling potions, I was sure to break every single block in the room because I might need it later on throughout the prison. After checking and grabbing everything, I returned to the room and got ready to land in the lava so I could negate fall damage. I didn't want to waste a slow falling potion just yet, so I got ready to jump off, and sure enough, once I was ready, I leaped off the platform, hit the lava below, and landed on the ground safe and sound. Once I was on the very ground level, I waited for my fire damage to wear off, and then I walked over to where the sign was. I was sure to break the sign because, while it may seem surprising, some of the simplest items can have a critical use later on, so after I broke it, I got ready and placed my boat. Now, some of you might be confused on how a boat can help me. There's actually a really cool trick you can do with a boat. See, if you have a corner that looks like this, you can actually phase through any block, whether it's grass or bedrock, or even a barrier or command blocks. As long as you have a boat in a corner just like this, you're able to phase through it, so that's exactly what I did. Okay, this next room was weird. I know a lot of you probably don't even know what or how this is, but this is with no mods or even commands. This is what's known as an infinity room, and it looks unescapable until you realize, oh, it's just an item frame and maps. Yeah, so the way this works is you build a giant platform out of snow, and basically after you map it out and put item frames, it looks as if the room goes forever. A very cool trick, but also a very good illusion to make it look like the room goes forever, but the escape to this room is actually really simple. I continued to break more item frames until it revealed a room behind glass, which would be easy to break, but it still didn't leave yet. I was sure to collect all the item frames and maps because there could be secrets behind them and I might need them for later. After I collected all of them, I broke the glass and continued into the next room. The next room was weird. It was really big and all it seemed to have was a chest with a water bucket inside, but this would actually be very useful and handy. I searched throughout the room, but all I could really find was a 1x1 block hole that I could only get into by either A, using my trapdoors, or B, use my water bucket. After deciding to go inside the hole, I started going into crawl mode and started exploring. I kept crawling through the area I was in. It looked like some sort of maze I could only access through by crawling. I kept crawling until I noticed an area that caught my eye. It was an area with cobwebs. While it did make me crawl slower, I realized I could actually collect these. I went back to the big weird room I had found at the beginning and crafted a wooden sword using some wood that I had from the tree earlier. Then, after crafting my sword, I broke the cobwebs and was able to get 4 string from it, the perfect amount to make a block of wool. I kept crawling through the tunnel until I noticed an area that had command blocks at it. I was assuming that this is where I had to go, but I was still sure to check every single area of the tunnel to make sure I wasn't missing any critical items that I may need later for the escape. After that, I decided to make my way down the hall, and then I stepped on a pressure plate which is on top of the command block. After I was teleported, I had realized that all of my items out of my inventory had been taken except my water bucket and the 4 string that I had, but then that's when I saw it. The exit to the prison. I would finally be able to get out. I did have a water bucket, but I decided I was going to escape this prison the way it was intended, so I took my string and crafted the wool block I needed to get up on top of the platform so I could get out. The last thing I needed to do now was MLG outside the prison so I could finally escape. I successfully landed the MLG. This allowed me to escape the prison and finally get out of Minecraft's impossible prison, the command block prison. This is the command block prison 2.0, and it is the hardest prison ever built in Minecraft. This has some of the coolest puzzles I have ever seen. Stay to the very end to see all of them and to see if I can escape, and enjoy the video. I spawned inside of a small bedrock box. I was enclosed and there was lava all around me, and I was inside of a giant room with a giant command block at the center. I looked behind me and saw a sign that said last and an arrow pointing to the left. I didn't know if this was pointing to the wall or something else, but it was definitely a hint at something I would need later. I decided to break it because some of the simplest items can have a big effect. I didn't look to an F5, but didn't see anything on the box that I was in. After that, I started clicking through the lava and actually found the chest with an ender pearl, and I was about to use it to glitch out of the prison, but then that's when I realized I didn't know if this prison was 1 block or 10 blocks thick, and I didn't want to suffocate, so I decided to play it safe and pearl to the center and get out of the box. Now that I was outside of my small bedrock box, I had a few moments to breathe and relax. Since the floor was made out of lava, it would be hard to traverse through it. But then that's when I saw a sign that said 2nd/3rd key. I didn't really know what it meant, but then that's when I saw it. While exploring, I saw a sign with the word exit on it. I instantly decided to run up the staircase until I was inside of a room. This room was very weird looking. This is called an infinity room. While it is just maps, I looked down and tried breaking one of them, but then realized that this could be over 100 feet deep since I wasn't able to break the bottom one. There were glass panes above it and a sign that said 1 will fall, use your keys. I was assuming that this would be sort of a glass ridge game, but I had no keys whatsoever or hints to what this would be, and there was really no way for me to know which was safe, so I decided to skip it for now. When I got back downstairs, I saw a sign that said first key. There were a lot of rooms around me, but I decided to start here since it said it was the first one. I looked around me and saw a tall bedrock wall that wasn't able to be jumped over since I didn't have any items. I then saw signs on the wall. I decided to look in third-person FOV and saw a dropper on the other side. I was assuming there was a valuable item, but then that's when I looked at the signs on the wall. They were random numbers, and I could be mistaken, but they actually looked like they were coordinates. Since I had no better guess on what they might be, I decided to travel to them, and it turned out they were right outside the room. And when I walked to the coordinates, it turned out there was a hidden chest under the lava containing a boat. This would be very helpful and allow me to get over a bedrock wall and avoid fall damage in the future. After getting back to room 1, I decided that I was going to use my boat to get over. I could have used my ender pearl, but I might need it for later in an area where I can't use a boat, so I decided to use the boat. And I even landed it first try. After making it up first try, I went up above the ledge and saw that there was a dropper. When I opened the dropper, there was a piece of paper that said "Right" and 9 iron nuggets. Now, I knew that 9 iron nuggets could be crafted to make an iron ingot, but I didn't know what "right" meant. Was it referring to the glass bridge that I saw earlier, or something else? I didn't really know, but I decided to break the dropper to see if there was anything behind it. After breaking the dispenser and seeing that there was nothing behind it, I made my way back in my boat, collected it, and then made my way back into the main room. After looking at the giant command block that was above me, I decided I was going to go check out room 4 for some reason next. Look, I don't know why, okay? I was tired when I filmed this because the last video did buns. Anyways, after checking out room 4, I realized something weird about it. There was a really tall bedrock wall. In fact, it was so high that I literally couldn't even see over it, even when using third-person FOV. I could have used my ender pearl, but I didn't know if I would have gotten stuck, and I might need it later for something else, so I decided not to risk it, and just come back to room 4 later. On my way back from room 4, I realized that there had been 2 rooms that I hadn't explored yet. The 2nd/3rd room, and a room without a sign, which was kind of weird. And gosh, was it weird, because when I looked up in that room, there were 4 sheep dangling from the ceiling. Now, it looked like on the wall there were arrows, and I was assuming that I would need a bow. Whether it was to kill the sheep or do something else, I didn't know. I also saw a crafting table on the wall. It could be hiding something behind it, but if I were to break it, I wouldn't be able to get it back, and I might need it for later, so I decided to keep it there. There was also a piece of flint on the wall. I didn't have anything to use these items for, and the flint seemed kind of pointless, but I still took them anyways to make sure I had everything I would need for this prison, and decided that I was also going to come back to this room later. The only room that I hadn't explored yet was the second/third room. There was a little bit of parkour I had to do to get up there, but it was nothing too challenging, and I made my way up with a breeze. I noticed something about this room. This was the only one with the hallway leading to it that wasn't directly connected to the main room. When I got into the room, it appeared that there was some iron bar parkour to get up to a ledge above. And when I tried to get past the tall bedrock wall in the center, I actually wasn't able to because, well, it was a 1.5 block jump. You see, I wasn't able to place my boat because it's a 1x1 hole, and boats don't fit in there. And again, I could use my ender pearl, but also I didn't know if I needed it here. So honestly, I was actually kind of stuck. I mean, I'd already explored literally every single room. I'd even explored the exit room. I really didn't want to have to use my ender pearl here, but I was really starting to think that that might be my only choice. Except it wasn't. Back when I was in the room with all the sheep, there was a crafting table on the wall. Now, I know what you're thinking. What am I actually able to craft with what's in my inventory? Well, I was actually surprised that I hadn't noticed it, but I was actually able to make a flint and steel. Well, first, let's talk about how. I can use the 9 iron nuggets in my inventory to craft an iron ingot, then combine that with flint. But a lot of you are probably wondering, why do I need a flint and steel? Well, if you didn't know this, Minecraft can give you momentum if you take damage. So, if we make a flint and steel and light the bedrock on fire, which by the way never runs out, sort of like netherrack, well, we can get a momentum boost and actually make this 1.5 block jump with no mods or commands whatsoever. So that's exactly what I did. I made it up on top of the bedrock ledge and didn't take nearly as much damage as I thought I would. Now that I was able to go down, I had a few moments to relax. This next area was also a little weird. I was able to get closer to the iron bar parkour, but I actually wasn't able to get onto the entrance. I decided to check out the dropper that was on the wall. In it were 2 wood planks and 3 string. I then broke it, hoping something would be hidden behind it, but once again there was nothing there, but still a good idea to break everything to make sure I have all the resources I might need. Next, I went up to the platform to try to get up to the iron bar parkour. I tried using my 2 wood planks to get up there since I was actually hoping and thinking that that was what it was made for, but even then I wasn't able to place my boat up there or make the jump, so once again I was kind of stuck and not sure on what to do. I did have my ender pearl with me, and I could have used it, but again, like always, I wasn't sure if I would need it for this part or not, so I decided to break my 2 wood planks and use my string and try to think of something I might need to do. After thinking for a little longer on how I was supposed to get up there, I actually realized that there was a crafting recipe that I could do this whole time, but never had. See, earlier I tried to use my oak planks as blocks, but what if I turned them into sticks? Hear me out. If I turn them into sticks and use the 3 string that I have, I can actually make a bow. Then using the arrows in the sheep room, I can actually shoot the sheep from where I am, collect their wool, and use it to tower up onto the little area, and then use the iron bar parkour to get up to the main platform. I decided I was going to do this method, and hopefully this will be the right way. After making sure that using my 2 oak planks wasn't high enough to just hit the sheep and conserve materials, I went over to the crafting table and crafted my bow. After that, I got below the first sheep and shot it, but it didn't die. I had already wasted an arrow and the sheep hadn't died. I would need to kill all of the other ones with 1 shot. I shot the sheep again and it did die. Then I got below the next one and shot it. This time the second one died in 1 shot. Then I did the same thing with the third one and it also died in 1 shot. But I had no more arrows, and I couldn't shoot the 4th sheep, so I would just have to deal with 3 wool. After walking down the long hallway, I used the fire to get back onto the ledge I had before. Then I used my 3 pieces of wool to get onto the ledge I hadn't been able to get on earlier. I used my boat to carry me the rest of the way up, and then began the iron bar parkour, but then that's when it happened. I was on half a heart, and this challenge almost ended just like that. It was a good reminder to be careful and take it slower. But while I'm doing this iron bar parkour, I want to let you know something. I will admit to you, I have probably made countless mistakes that I haven't even noticed, so I want you to make a debunk. What that basically is you filming a YouTube video and saying the mistakes I made and the things I missed and things that I could have done better. And if you do that, I will feature all of your debunks in one single live stream. That's right, your video will be in my live stream, so be sure to debunk this video and be sure to rewatch it if you enjoy it, and enjoy the rest of the video. When I looked inside the dispenser, I saw a piece of paper that said left. It was a lot like the other one I had found, but instead of saying right, it said left. I also found some golden carrots though, which did let me regenerate and was a nice little perk of getting up here. I parkoured my way down and decided I was going to figure out what these pieces of paper meant before I went to the 4th/5th room. After collecting all my blocks from the previous room, I thought about what the pieces of paper could mean. They could be directions for the glass bridge that I found at the very beginning of this video, but that didn't make sense. Why had I gone through rooms and only found 2 pieces of paper? There were only 4 rooms over here, and the sheep room didn't even have one. Let's hope that the 4th/5th room has something better for us. When I walked back into the 4th room, I saw a giant tall bedrock wall. I wasn't able to get over it using my wool and wasn't high enough to place my boat. The literal only thing in my inventory I could use to get over it was my ender pearl. I really had been trying not to use this at this point, but I had no other option. I used my pearl and was sure to pearl on top of the wall so that way I wouldn't be stuck on the other side, and then I placed down my boat so I would be able to get back up. I then looked inside the dispenser and saw yet another sheet. This time, the piece of paper said right left. I was so confused on what these meant, so I decided I was going to fully understand it now. Hear me out on this. Each room has a sign with a number on it, except the sheep room. Each room with the sign in front of it had a piece of paper. The one room without a sign doesn't have any paper though? That's leading me to believe that the paper has something to do with the signs. But then I thought to myself, what if the number on the sign was the order I jumped on the glass bridge, and the paper was my key? Take this for example. The sign in front of the first room said first key. On that piece of paper, it said right. Then, in the room that had the sign titled 2nd/3rd key, well, it had one word on that piece of paper, left. What if that's where I jump? For the 2nd and 3rd jump, I go left. And then this room, it has 2 directions, right and left. What if on my 4th jump, I go right, then on my 5th, I go left? It was starting to make sense. The signs and the pieces of paper were connected. The paper was my key. The only thing left to do now was to use it. After collecting all of my extra items from the other rooms, I made my way to the glass bridge. I was sure to break every single sign and other dispenser in another room so I could maximize the amount of blocks that I had. I then broke the stairs that led up to the glass bridge to make sure there was nothing under them. There was nothing under them, but it was still a good idea to break them because you always want to make sure you have everything for the next room. But without further ado, it was time to make my first jump. The first sheet of paper said right, so that would mean I would have to go to the right. If I was wrong about this, I would fall to my death. I made the leap of faith, and luckily, the glass below me didn't disappear. I decided to break the glass to my left in case I needed to come back, that way I wouldn't get confused on which path to take. Then, I decided I was going to make my next jump. The piece of paper had said left. This was a really big jump, and I was going to have to get enough momentum for it. I got back, got my momentum, and made the jump. Since the sheet of paper didn't have any other instructions, I was assuming it meant left again, so that's what I did. I made another leap of faith and went on the left side of the glass, and luckily didn't die. I was sure to break every piece of glass in case I needed to come back, and so I wouldn't be confused. Then the next sheet of paper. It said right and then left, so that's exactly what I did. So then I backed up to the very edge of the glass and then jumped. I luckily made the jump and didn't fall to my doom. Finally, I had to make the jump to the left, and after backing up and getting enough momentum, I took a leap of faith and made the jump. But then that's when I noticed a massive problem. There was still one more jump, but I had no more sheets of paper left in my inventory. But then I thought back to myself. At the very beginning of this prison, there had been a sign that said last and an arrow pointing to the left. But it couldn't be. It was the only thing that made sense. It hadn't been giving hints at anything else, and this seemed to be the last puzzle. So, without further ado, I decided to trust the sign and make my final leap of faith. The sign had been correct. I successfully made the jump to the correct piece of glass, allowing me to beat the glass ridge, but something was weird. See, I had thought the whole time that this was the very last puzzle, but I didn't see any daylight whatsoever. I had not yet escaped the command block prison 2.0, and there most likely was one last trap. The next area was really weird. It says when you push the button, you'll have 1 minute, and I opened the dispenser, and there were wheat seeds in it. This was a random sort of words and items, but when I walked into the next room, things got insane. There's a set of stairs leading up to what I thought might be the last room, but when I walked up them, well, this was unlike anything I had ever seen. There was a giant command block at the center of the room, surrounded by multiple smaller command blocks, generating a giant galaxy around me. It looked like I was in some sort of ginormous glass box, surrounded by this ginormous galaxy the command block was generating. This was definitely the last room. I walked around and was on some sort of glass roof with a bedrock roof surrounding it, but then I saw a bedrock wall. It looked like that might be the door to escape the prison, but I still had no clue what this puzzle was. I looked closer at the glass area. It looked almost as if there was a smaller maze inside of it, but I really couldn't decide or figure out what it was. The best chance I had of beating this was to push the button. The second that I pushed the button, a chicken came out of it, and then I realized what I would have to do. I was going to have to guide this chicken to the very end of the maze before time ran out. There was only 50 seconds left. 40 seconds. 30 seconds. 20 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. After I barely made the chicken get onto the pressure plate, the door opened up to the very exit of the command block prison. If I had been any later, the command block would have erased me from reality. I jumped out of the top story and landed a boat clutch at the very bottom, then took my boat and paddled into the ocean, escaping the command block prison 2.0. This is the Portal Prison, and it is the trippiest prison ever built. And it has some of the coolest mind-breaking puzzles I've ever seen in all of Minecraft. And if you want to see them all, stay till the very end of the video and enjoy. I spawned inside of a room made completely out of bedrock. I looked all around it. The room was absolutely massive and had some weird structures in the middle. I looked around me and there was a weird looking portal on the other side of something. I also saw a tall, narrow room, but then that's when I went over to the back wall and saw a mirror. This was definitely not normal, since mirrors don't actually exist in vanilla Minecraft. There was a weirdly shaped hole in the bedrock wall that looked like it could be a door, but I wasn't really sure. I tried to make my way to the weird-looking portal on the other side, but it turned out there were barriers blocking me from getting into it. Now, I was pretty sure that this is where I had to get, but I wasn't sure. I tried punching the barriers and bedrock around me, but there were no holes visible, so I would have to come back here later. I decided I was going to go through one of the weird-looking structures, but then that's when something really weird happened. You see, it looked like there was a completely different room inside the other structure, and when I looked on the other side, it appeared that the same thing was happening there as well. This was so weird. I looked behind it, and there was nothing, but then when I looked inside of it, there was a giant room. How was this even possible? It was like it was some sort of portal to another area of the prison. I also saw a sign that said, "You get one free dead, use it well." I did decide to take the sign because it might be able to help me later, but I didn't know what it meant by "you get one dead." Anyways, I walked inside the room and the exit somehow closed behind me and I wasn't able to get back into the room I was originally in, but then I saw a bottle and an item frame on the wall. I decided to take these items because they definitely seemed like something I would need later. Then I searched the rest of the room to make sure I wasn't missing any important items and then moved on to the next part of the room. The next room I walked into was a little weird. I was able to see into the main room, but it was really tall with a hole at the top of the ceiling, but then that's when I saw a sign that said "place water here." But that was a problem. You see, while I do have a glass bottle, I can't actually use that to place water. And I don't have any bucket with me, and there's no visible water source that I've found so far, so we really need to hope that we find these items along the way if we want to see what's up there. After making sure that there were no more items left in the room, I decided I was going to go explore the next area of the prison, which was an entrance to my right, but then I realized something. You see, I had been about to walk into the next room, but I had remembered that the mirror behind me looked a lot like glass, and, well, glass can be broken easily. So I returned back to the mirror that had been behind me the whole time, and when I broke it, it actually revealed that there was a secret area behind it. I was sure to break every piece of glass to make sure I wasn't missing anything. Then I explored the area. It was a little weird. It was very small and there didn't appear to be any sort of items inside of it, but then I saw another mirror. And, well, logically, since the last time I broke a mirror, it had something behind it, and sure enough, when I broke this one, it had something behind it as well, which didn't make any sense because the other side was completely different, but this is the portal prison after all. After confirming that this did defy all physics of reality and Minecraft as I knew it, I made my way down the hallway that I just found. The first thing that I saw while walking down the hallway was a tall ledge that I wasn't able to reach, and I didn't have any items whatsoever in my inventory that I could use to tower up there, so I would have to come back to it later. Then I made my way down the rest of the hallway. This next room was very weird though. It had some sort of weird structure in the middle with a giant hole in the ceiling above it, and when I looked through one of the sides, well, it didn't exactly add up. See, I walked under one of the archways and appeared on the other side, but then it appeared there was a bigger room inside of the archway somehow. The room under all of the archways looked weird. It was very tall and there weren't any items like whatsoever inside of it, so I decided to walk out. Then I went into the other side of the archway. This time, the room was actually much different. But then when I looked behind me, I was able to see myself for what looked like forever and ever, but then that's when I saw it. On the ground inside of an item frame was an iron ingot. I decided to take this because this would actually help me craft a water bucket and hopefully get water so I could get up to the area in the hole in the ceiling from earlier. After moving around for a little bit longer, I figured out how to get out of this area. Then I decided that I was going to go back to the main room and explore the one area that I hadn't yet, but I still had some questions, like why was there a giant hole in the ceiling in the room that I just came from? But nevertheless, I made my way to the second portal to see what was inside this room. This next room was just like all the other ones, very weird. I was able to see down for what looked like forever and even able to see myself. It looked like it was a giant parkour course, and you're probably wondering what would be so bad if I fell, but if I were to fall, it actually looked like I would be falling forever and then just take fall damage once I hit the first block below me. So I would have to do this parkour without failing once. The first few jumps of the parkour were pretty simple, but then that's when it happened. I had fallen once, and if I had fallen even one more story down, then I for sure would have died. This was a good reminder to take it slower than I was, so that way I wouldn't lose this challenge. I then made the rest of the jumps. Once again, the parkour wasn't that difficult, but it was very stressful knowing that if I fell just once, or if I even made just one small mistake, I could end my whole run right here. Every now and then I would look over the edge to see if I could see any floor, but I didn't. But a lot of you are probably wondering something. How do I know that if I fall, I would fall forever? Well, the fact that I'm able to see myself proves that there is a portal down there, and since the ceiling is pitch black, it most likely also has a portal connected to the one on the floor as well, so if I were to fall, I would be trapped in an eternal loop, and then when I hit the ground, I would just take the fall damage. After making my way to the very end of the parkour, I noticed that there was an item frame containing another iron ingot on the wall. This did confirm my theory that I was going to need to craft a water bucket to get up to the hole in the ceiling. Now that I had 2 iron ingots, I only needed 1 more before we could finally see what was at the top of the room. I made my way back down from the ledge and decided to parkour my way back to get back to the main room. But I didn't notice something. See, I hadn't actually checked here earlier, but in the very back right corner of the giant room where I spawned in, there was a small hole. I was assuming that there was something in here, but as far as I could see, there wasn't actually anything in there, and I was too big to fit inside, so I was wondering, how would I get inside there, and what would I find inside of it? I decided to make my way back down the hallway to see if there were any useful clues or hints that I had missed, and sure enough, there was actually a hallway branching out to the left that I actually hadn't seen before. I walked down this hallway, and it led to a weird looking room with a sign that said shrink room and two portal looking structures. I decided to look inside both of the portal looking structures. It looked weird in both of the structures, and I couldn't really explain why, but I did decide to take the end rods that were in the middle. They were most likely just for decoration, but it's good to have any item you can in the prison. But anyways, I decided to walk through the one portal looking structure that I was able to, except when I came out, I was actually tiny, and then I realized this was how I would get inside that small hole. You see, earlier I wasn't actually able to get inside the 1 block hole because I was 2 blocks tall, but now that I was 1 block tall, I was able to basically get inside of any small space I could think of. Now, all I had to do was make my way back to the main room and get inside the small hole. Also, while I'm on my way back to the main room, I wanted to let you know something. I'll admit to you, this person is most likely not impossible, and I'm sure I've made a lot of mistakes, so I want you to debunk it. Basically, what that means is you make your very own YouTube video exposing the mistakes that I did, and it will all be featured in one live stream coming up. That's right, your YouTube video will be featured in my live stream, so if you think I made some mistakes, just call me out in a video of yours, and enjoy the rest of the video. I made my way all the way back to the main room, and then went inside the 1x1 block hole. This was very weird because I wasn't seeing any items until I turned the corner and there were actually stairs. Luckily though, I was still so small, I was actually able to fit in them. This was even less than 0.5 blocks wide. The really small hallway led to an actually decently sized room. It was actually kind of weird though. It had 4 cauldrons that I wasn't really able to fit under, and a crafting table that was really difficult to reach. I then used my empty bottle and clicked one of the cauldrons, but it actually turned out there was water in them. And sure enough, it actually turned out there was water inside of all of the cauldrons except the one on the right. This was very useful because this might be where I'm able to get my water from so I can reach the hole in the ceiling. I decided though, since I didn't have a bucket yet, I was going to come back to this room later and explore the rest of the prison before getting my water bucket and making my way up to the hole in the ceiling. I made my way all the way back to the shrink room. I wasn't sure if it would work in reverse, but I was really hoping so because I needed to get back to my normal size. And sure enough, after going in the portal reverse way, I was actually able to get back to my normal size. But then I had remembered something. There was actually an area of this prison I hadn't explored yet. Now, you're probably wondering what. Well, there was actually a ledge that I had seen at the very beginning of seeing the hallway, but I wasn't able to reach it. That was until I thought to myself, why was there a hole in that one room in the very top of the ceiling? I mean, there's surely a reason why it was up there. So I decided to go back to the weird looking room with the hole in the ceiling and see what was up with it. There was actually something in this room I hadn't realized yet. I was able to get on top of the archway, which may not seem relevant, but when I looked down, there was actually a hole. And when I fell through it, well, it turned out it was actually a portal, but something felt weird. And when I looked in F5, well, I was actually bigger. And this confirmed my theory. The hole was for something, but then I just realized something. See, when I was smaller, I was only able to make a 1 block jump, but now that I'm big, I'm actually able to make up to almost a 5 block jump, letting me get over this giant ledge and hopefully seeing what's on the other side. I made my way back down the long hallway. This time I was much faster just because of the sheer size that I was. And then I decided I was going to see if I was tall enough to jump over it, and sure enough, I made my way over the ledge with breeze. Now that I was over the ledge, I was able to see what was on the other side. I didn't see any items, but then the next room I went into was absolutely massive. This room was even bigger than the room that I had spawned inside of, and it looked like there was a giant parkour course around me. But the weird thing was, the jumps didn't actually seem possible until I realized, because of how tall I am, I'm actually able to make really far and really tall jumps I wouldn't usually be able to make if I was only 2 blocks tall, so I decided to do the parkour and see what was at the very top of it. The parkour itself wasn't actually that hard, but it was kind of hard to control myself just because of how big I was. But it was nice because every time I fell, I would barely even take half a heart of damage just because of how big I was. After a little bit more parkour, I got to a part where there was a narrow beam. This part was actually very surprisingly hard just because of how thin the beam was compared to my size. But still, I didn't fall at this part and I made my way quickly up the stairs until I made it all the way to the very top. This next area was weird though. It had a chest with an iron ingot and I was about to make my way back down, but then that's when I realized something. I didn't have any way to get smaller. You see, earlier when I had gotten small, I had just gone through the portals in reverse, but I was now too big to fit back into the portal. So, how was I going to get smaller? But then, that's when I remembered something. At the very beginning of this prison, there had been a sign that said, "You get one free death, use it wisely." I did not want to use it here, but it really looked like it was the only way I could get back to my normal size and continue the rest of the prison and craft my water bucket. So, that's exactly what I did. I had died of fall damage, but luckily when I respawned, I was still inside of the prison. I had not lost the challenge, but I had used my one death. Hopefully I wouldn't need it later. I made my way back to the shrink machine so I could get back inside of the small hole. Then I used my empty bottle to fill the one cauldron with water, then used my bucket to collect the water, then made my way back to the room with the hole in the ceiling. After going back through the shrink machine, I made my way back to the room with the hole in the ceiling and placed the water exactly where the sign said to. After that, I used my water bucket and used the water to propel me up the wall and get into the room above the really tall one. After I was in the room at the very top of the tall one, I looked around. The only thing that I could see in the room was a bedrock block, a button, and a sign. The sign said when you push the button, it will open the portal. So that's exactly what I did. After I pushed the button, I waited around to see if something would happen, but nothing actually did happen. Except that's when I realized something. When I had been at the very beginning of this prison, I had tried to get through that hole in the bedrock archway, but wasn't able to. Did this button open that so I would be able to get to the portal behind the barriers? I decided to go back down and see if it did. I made my way back down to the main room and was actually able to walk right through where the barriers were. This was it. I had beaten the regular area and was now able to go through the main portal. Let's see what's on the other side of it. I jumped through the portal and looked around me. I was now in a different looking area. There were no items whatsoever. There were just a lot of archways that looked like they could be portals to other rooms. I walked through one of the archways, but it led me to an almost identical room, and then I saw myself in another room, and then I realized this was a portal maze, and I might be trapped in an infinite loop if I can't find the exit. I walked around for what seemed like ages. I was seeing no difference in rooms whatsoever, and no helpful items or blocks. I really needed to get out of here if I wanted to beat the challenge, but it was starting to seem impossible. Everywhere I went, I kept seeing myself over and over and over, and I really almost gave up until I saw something different. Unlike the other rooms, this one actually had blocks in it. I was able to notice two things. One was a glass box, and the other one was a dark tunnel I couldn't see into. I was afraid to walk into it because if I did, I might have the chance of being stuck inside of it forever and having no way out. The next area was very trippy. It was a set of mirrors that surrounded me on almost all sides, and I could see myself for what seemed like forever. It didn't seem like there was anything inside of the mirrors, so I decided to leave. But then I noticed something. A 1-block wide hole that was very tall on the very right side of the room. I decided to walk into it, and when I did, well, I saw probably the trippiest thing yet. At the end of the narrow passageway, there was a box-like structure, and when I looked down, well, it made no sense whatsoever. I looked up and saw a room, but it was facing sideways, and then when I looked left and right, I was able to see myself for what seemed like forever. When I walked forward, gravity morphed and I was somehow standing now. This box made no sense, but then I decided to take a leap of faith and see what was in the room below. This was a risk because if the gravity didn't shift, I would plummet my way down to the wall and take fall damage, but luckily when I did, I fell down and landed on the floor, barely losing any hearts of damage. There was a chest in the center of the room that I decided to open, and when I opened it, I found an item called a portal gun. Then I looked over to a wall and actually saw daylight. This was it. I could finally make my escape. I took the portal gun, aimed it outside, and shot it once. This created an empty portal outside. Now all I had to do was aim it at the floor. Then after that, I went through my very own custom portal that I just created, and I was now outside the portal prison. I then started to walk away. Where am I? No. Is this the command block prison? This is the final command block prison, and it is the hardest prison ever built in Minecraft. And it has some of the coolest puzzles I've ever seen, such as this giant galaxy parkour and even an 8-block jump. And if you want to see them all, stay to the very end of the video and enjoy. I spawned on top of a small bedrock platform. I looked all around me. I was in some sort of giant room. After looking around me for a little longer, I saw a giant pit of lava right below me. After looking around for some more time, I was able to make out 4 noticeable areas. First of all, I saw 4 different rooms. They all looked like they led to something, but there was no way for me to reach them from where I was. And I also saw a ladder with some parkour leading up to it, but again, if I were to jump down there, I would die and take fall damage. That was until I looked down and saw a command block beneath me. I thought about jumping down there, but I knew it was risky because, well, it didn't look like there was any way back up here from there, but it looked like it was the only way, so after thinking for a little longer, I decided to jump down to it. When I landed below me, I was on top of a command block with a button on top of it. I was assuming when I pressed it, it would spawn a platform below and start the prison, so let's escape the final command block prison. After pushing the button, some command blocks appeared below me, and it looked like there was a small source of water that I would be able to land in. After looking around me to make sure I wasn't missing any important materials, I jumped down into the water and successfully landed in it. After getting out of the water source, I looked around me to make sure there were no materials I was missing, then decided to go look at the rooms. Some of the rooms were normal looking, and others, well, looked a little weirder. But nevertheless, I was going to have to start at one area, so I decided to start at the back room and see what was in it. The first thing that I noticed about this room was that it was pretty big, but there wasn't a lot in it. I mean, I saw some blue ice at the very top and what looked like a ledge and an item frame, and some command blocks on the wall, and a staircase that led up to a higher level, but other than that, there was nothing actually on the ground level. I decided to go up the staircase first because there was nothing really on the ground level, but when I got to the top, I noticed something. There were iron trap doors on the top level of the ice, and when I walked to the very end, well, it actually looked like I was supposed to do an 8-block jump over this gap. Now, I know a lot of you don't actually think that's possible, but it actually is. You see, in Minecraft, you may have heard of something called momentum. How it basically works is if you build up enough speed, you'll be able to make far enough jumps. So if I build up enough momentum, I can actually make a 5-block jump, but it doesn't just end there. See, head hitters increase your momentum by a lot, and if I do a lot of them, I can even make a 6-block jump. But because I have blue ice, I can jump even further, so this 8-block jump might actually be possible if I spam a head hitter. So without further ado, let's try to make this 8-block jump. I got up against the very back of the wall so I could get as much momentum as I possibly could, then started the spam. I was successfully able to make the 8-block jump and didn't fall at all. This allowed me to get to the edge and hopefully get some valuable items up here. When I walked forward, I saw 2 item frames. One of them had a stick and one of them had cobblestone. I collected all of the items, including the item frame, then jumped down and landed in the water below me. Now that I had beaten the first room, I decided that I was going to go check out the second room, but on my way there, I actually realized that I hadn't gone up the tall ladder and done the small parkour yet, and there might be something valuable up there, so I decided to do that next. The parkour itself wasn't too hard, but the stress of knowing that if I died or fell just once, then I would lose this whole challenge was enough to make me nervous. But luckily, I finished the rest of the parkour and made my way up the rest of the ladder. Let me just tell you though, What I found at the top of this ladder was not what I was expecting. First of all, I saw 4 very weird looking command blocks on the ground, but after that I saw a sign that said find 4 levers, you will have 2 minutes after you walk in the room. It looked like there was a solid bedrock wall blocking the entrance to the room I needed to get in. I also was able to see out the windows, and well, what I saw out of it made literally no sense. It was just a giant galaxy all outside being generated by command blocks. I didn't have any levers, but I did have a stick and a cobblestone, which can be used to make a lever. So, in the other rooms, will I find other levers, or something else? I don't know, but let's go find out. After making my way down the rest of the ladder, I then was back in the main area of the first room. I then decided I was going to go to another room to see if I could get to another lever. After going into another room, I noticed something weird about it. It had different connecting pathways, and I didn't really see an intended purpose to it yet. That was, until I saw a chest and opened it. Inside the chest was a lead. I didn't really know what I would need it for, but then I looked below one of the leading pathways, and I saw a sheep. Now, I really didn't know what I was supposed to do, but then I noticed a command block with a pressure plate on it, and I thought to myself, do I need to lead the sheep down the pathway below me to get onto the command block? If so, this wasn't going to be an easy task, because if I slipped or fell just once, not only would the sheep die, but also I could die, and I could lose this whole challenge. Not to mention that if the sheep just fell once, I would have no way to reach the pressure plate, so I was going to have to do this first try. Once my lead was attached to the sheep, I started making my way forward. This was by far one of the hardest challenges I had ever done in my whole life in playing Minecraft, because if the sheep fell just once, it would be ended. It also was an uneven platform, meaning that my platform wasn't directly above the sheep's, and it was much harder to aim and control where it went. It was already hard enough carrying the sheep down the straight edges, but during turns it was even harder because it didn't seem to know where it was going. Everything was going pretty smoothly though until we reached this area where I had to go upwards. The sheep for some reason was stuck and wasn't able to move up. After maneuvering a little more, I still wasn't able to get it up the staircase, but finally it seemed to be in the right position, but for some reason it still wasn't going up. I slowly went up, knowing that if it fell, this whole challenge would be ended. I really needed it to stay on top of the platform in order for me to win. But finally, after going forward a bit longer, the sheep finally made its way up the staircase. After a couple more turns, the sheep was on the very last part of the course. After this whole challenge of getting the sheep, I finally got my reward, and in my inventory appeared a piece of cobblestone and another stake. I had successfully beaten that room, and now I was one step closer to unlocking the main room. Okay, I was halfway done with this prison. It appeared that there were only 2 rooms left, so after making my way out of the second room, I decided I was going to go check out the third room. This was the room on the very left of the prison, but something was weird about it. See, it had water, and it was actually lower than the rest of the prison. After going down the water, I noticed 2 very strange things about it. The first thing was that there was a rabbit on top of a very high pillar, but I didn't know why it was there. After going up the staircase, on the very back of the wall, I noticed a brewing stand with an awkward potion in it. I had no clue why this was here, but there was also a ledge that I wasn't able to reach. It was 1.5 blocks high, so it wouldn't be that hard to reach, because I just needed 1 more block, or even just half of a block, but I didn't have any of those. But a lot of you are probably wondering, why don't I use my cobblestone to get up? I mean, I do have 2 cobblestone in my inventory and I could probably waste 1. But that's the thing. See, these prisons, I don't know what's actually coming up, and I definitely need to make levers for the 4 command blocks to open the door to the main room we saw earlier. So that wasn't really an option, and I really didn't want to waste an item and need it later, because cobblestone can't be picked back up since I didn't have a pickaxe. So if I placed it there and needed it later, I wouldn't have any lever to place on the 4th command block, and we would lose this challenge. Since there didn't appear to be any more items I could use to get up on the ledge in this room, I decided I was going to go check out the 4th and final area of this prison. But this next area was weirder than all of the other ones. You see, it wasn't even a room. It was a long hallway with command blocks lining the top, the bottom, and both sides. I first started off by going to the very end of the hallway, but there wasn't anything there. I decided to go back to the very beginning of the hallway and take my first right. I went down that hallway, but there was nothing there at the end. This definitely was some sort of sketchy maze, and I didn't know if I was going to be able to find the end of it. I was now back in the main part of the hallway of the maze. This time, I decided to take the second right. This time, the hallway was much longer, and it almost felt like there was no end, but Finally, after getting to the end of this section of the hallway, I was in a weird looking room. This room was very different from all the other ones because it had command blocks on the ceiling but nothing on the floor. There was a small wall that I was able to jump over, but I didn't yet. But something was weird about it. Why were there command blocks on the ceiling in some sort of pattern? I also saw a chest that I wasn't able to reach from here, but it likely contained some valuable items I would need later. But I was still so confused on why there was a pattern on the ceiling with command blocks, and why the entrance was right below the pattern. But then that's when I thought to myself, what if I have to follow this pattern? You're not able to interact with command blocks in survival Minecraft, and the only reason they've been on the walls and even in this prison is just for decoration. But this is more than a decoration. Why would it form this weird looking pattern? Well, after thinking a little longer, it actually looks like it formed a pathway. And then I thought to myself, what if that's where I have to walk? See, since this is a command block prison, there could be a command block activating a command where if I don't stand directly below these command blocks, it will kill me instantly if I touch the ground around them. So, I would have to follow the command blocks right below its path and hope that I don't go out of bounds. I got ready to walk below the path of the command blocks. Before I did, I was sure to look around me to see if there were any items that I was missing, and then I decided to make my way into the maze. I first walked below the command blocks. At first, it wasn't that difficult, but soon it became way more challenging as there were way more turns. I stayed directly below the command blocks, being sure not to move even a pixel to the left or right, knowing that if I did, I would for sure die and lose this whole challenge. I knew I had to escape this prison. It didn't seem like much, but every single step that I took was a step closer to getting towards that chest so I could finally open it and hopefully get another piece of cobblestone and a stick. This next area, though, was probably the most challenging yet. It had multiple different turns, and if I moved even a pixel forward too far, I would die. I came very close to the edges at some parts, but luckily, I was able to stay below the command blocks the whole time and make it to the next set of turns. These last set of turns were difficult, but I was able to manage them, and I kept going until I made my way all the way to the very end of the command block pathway and made my way to the chest. The chest contained 2 items, a stick and 10 pieces of bedrock. Now, I knew what the stick was for, but I didn't really know what the bedrock was for until I realized something. See, when I had been inside of the 3rd room of this prison, I noticed that there was a rabbit on top of a bedrock pillar. I hadn't had any blocks to get up to it whatsoever, but now I had 10 bedrock. But what would I need the rabbit for? Well, I had also noticed a brewing stand with an awkward potion inside. I didn't need blaze powder because it looked like the brewing stand was already fueled, indicated by the yellow line, but what would I use the rabbit for? Well, if you didn't know, in Minecraft if you kill a rabbit, you're actually able to get an item called a rabbit's foot. Then, if I combine that with an awkward potion, I can actually get a potion of leaping, allowing me to get over the ledge that I wasn't able to earlier. Now the only thing left to do is make my way back down the command block path and hopefully not step out of bounds. But while I'm doing this, I want to tell you about something. Look, I'll admit to you, just like all the other prisons, I'll admit that this is probably not impossible, and I'm sure I've made countless mistakes and errors, so I want you to call me out on it and make a debunk. What that basically is you filming your very own YouTube video explaining the mistakes I made. It can be you playing through this prison, it can be you reacting to it and showing the mistakes, I don't really care, but it will be featured in one live stream that I have coming up very soon. That's right, your YouTube video will be featured in my live stream, so if you think I made some mistakes, be sure to call me out on it and enjoy the rest of the video. I quickly made my way down the rest of the hallway. I was really hoping that this was the right thing to do because I was ready to finally escape this final command block prison. When I did get to the right area, I pillared up and, well, unfortunately I had to hit the rabbit off the top, but it's okay because it did in fact drop a rabbit's foot. Now all I had to do was grab that rabbit's foot, put it in the brewing stand, and then make my potion of leaping. I got ready to walk up the stairwell, but yeah, cut that part out. I walked up the stairwell and put my rabbit's foot in the brewing stand. There was already an awkward potion, so I didn't have to make that. And since there was already blaze powder, I didn't need that either. Because I had time before my potion was done brewing, I decided to go explore more of the hallway. There had been one section of the hallways that I hadn't explored yet, and that was when I took a left. This time when I went down the hallway lined with command blocks, I did in fact take that left, and well, it led me down a bit of a long hallway, and it actually led me to a similar room to where the command block pathway was, but except this time, the floor was made out of lava with a couple of bedrock platforms. I knew that this was probably just some simple parkour, but still, if I fell once, I would die and lose this whole challenge. I decided to go back and grab my potion, and then use that before coming back to this room. When I had arrived back at the third room, my potion had finished brewing, so all I had to do now was drink it and then make the jump on top of the bedrock ledge. Luckily it was enough and I finally made the jump up to it. Then I took my items up there. It was the same as the past two rooms, one stick and one cobblestone, but that meant I only needed one more lever until I was able to enter the main room with the galaxy. I was really hoping this parkour contained it, so let's go see if we're able to beat this prison once and for all. It didn't look like there were any tricks or traps to this puzzle, and I still had a bit of jump boost, so I made the first jump, but after looking around the lava, I actually found some golden carrots. I decided to start scanning throughout the lava to see if there were any more chests, but as far as I could tell, there weren't any left, but it was nice to get a refuel on food, because I was running out of them. I made the next few jumps onto the command blocks with these. Again, this parkour wasn't too challenging, but if I fell once, I would likely die. Everything was going just fine until this happened. If I had not found the golden carrots, I would have died right there and then. That was a good reminder to take it slowly throughout this prison, but I made the last couple of jumps with these and collected my last piece of cobblestone and my last stick. All I had to do now was craft up my levers and use them to open the door to the final room. After doing some last jumps on the parkour, I made my way back down the long hallway filled with command blocks and back to the main room. Now all I had to do was make my way up to the parkour, up to the ladder, and climb it to the top and craft up my levers. After finishing the last bit of the small parkour, I started climbing up the ladder, but when I got to the very top, this happened. I had almost lost the prison a second time in a row right at the very end. I needed to take it slower and at a more steady pace, but once I got to the top, I was able to craft my levers and I could finally place them on the 4 command blocks and enter the very last room. After crafting up my 4 levers, I placed them all on the 4 command blocks. This was it. Once I flicked all of the levers, the bedrock wall would open and I could finally enter the very last room. After I flicked them all, the bedrock wall did in fact open, but I was kind of cautious to enter the room. You see, the sign said once you enter the room, you will have 2 minutes. I didn't even know what that meant, but I decided to enter anyways. When I looked up, there was a ceiling made of lava and glass under it. The whole box was surrounded by a giant galaxy being generated by command blocks. I saw what looked like bedrock parkour. The parkour did look challenging, but I just needed to beat it, right? Well, that's what I thought, until I made my first jump. It appeared that the lava had trapped me, but then that's when I saw a sign and a button. The sign said destroy all prisons, and that's when I realized this button would destroy every single prison. All I had to do now was push it.